Well, that song got me teared up a little bit. Laura and I had that song sing at our wedding. I didn't know that was going to play. So I wish it was my idea. I could have scored some points. But Laura and I, we recently celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary just a little over a couple weeks ago. So we've been married a little over 16 years, and she's just as beautiful as the day we got married. But on the other hand, I just keep getting better looking. It ought to be against the law, John. Well, today in our summer Lovin' series, we will be looking at Lovin' Our Spouses. And this morning, I do feel a great burden today speaking on marriage and loving your spouse. And I recognize this may be a difficult message for some. If you are listening this morning as a widow or a widower having lost your spouse, you have our deepest sympathies. Also, if you have endured a difficult divorce or are single, wondering when the one will come along, all of those can make these kinds of messages difficult, but you don't need to sit there wondering about what might have been. As Paul said, forget what is behind and strain toward what is ahead. I'd also like to suggest this morning, if something I say strikes a chord with you, don't poke your spouse in the side saying, hey, you better listen up. That probably won't be well received. I know. So this morning, you just worry about what you were doing. Accept responsibility for your own part. Remember that every passing minute is another chance to turn it all around. This morning, there are different generations of marriages, and I'm honored to be in the company of so many marriages. And I'm sure I could learn much more from you than you can from me. But nevertheless, we'll explore some biblical insight and wisdom and some practical advice on loving our spouses. In a way, I feel like I'm going to be overwhelming you with a bunch of information. In another way, that I just don't have enough to say. But with all that being said, I'd like to break the ice and open with a short video clip. Please pay attention. It's very serious.
Hey, well, I had a very interesting lunch with George Costanza today. Really? We were talking about our lives, and we both kind of realized we're kids. We're not men.
So then you asked yourselves, isn't there something more to life?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, well, let me clue you in on something. There isn't.
There isn't.
Absolutely not. I mean, what are you thinking about, Jerry? Marriage? Family?
Well,
they're prisons. Man-made prisons. You're doing time. You get up in the morning, she's there. You go to sleep at night, she's there. It's like you got to ask permission to use the bathroom. Is it all right if I use the bathroom?
really?
Yeah, and you can forget about watching TV while you're eating.
I can?
Oh, yeah. You know why? Because it's dinner time. And you know what you do at dinner?
What?
You talk about your day. How was your day today? Did you have a good day today or a bad day today? Well, what kind of day was it? Well, I don't know. How about you? How was your day? Boy, it's sad, Jerry. It's a sad state of affairs.
I'm glad we had this talk.
Oh, you have no idea.
All right, well, that wasn't that serious. Am I in trouble? A lot of people nowadays have a negative view of marriage, maybe like Kramer does there. But that's unfortunate because whether one has had a good or bad experience, marriage itself is a good thing. Hebrews 13:4 says marriage is honorable among all. So it's a good thing. Always remember that. I looked through the scriptures trying to think of a model couple. But that showed difficult. You've got Adam and Eve, who committed the first sin. Abraham and Sarah. Sarah offered Abraham another woman, and later Abraham lied about Sarah being his wife. Ananias and Sapphira, they lied about how much they sold some land for. Perhaps you could consider Zechariah and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist, or even Mary and Joseph, the parents of Jesus. We know them for their great example of faithfulness, but not much else. So then I thought about Ruth and Boaz. Now, Elimelech was married to Naomi and had 2 sons who were married. Now, Elimelech and the 2 sons died, leaving Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law widows, one of them being Ruth. Now, this left them outside the patriarchal clan, cut off from its protection and provision in a marriage. Now, long story short, Boaz, who was Elimelech's kin, married Ruth, becoming her kinsman redeemer. And in a sense, when we marry, we are each other's kinsman redeemers. In Christian marriage, we are brothers and sisters in Christ, saving each other from ourselves, creating something dynamic and beautiful together, something neither could have made as individuals alone. Ultimately, what we want in marriage is this: to be fully known, yet fully loved, and to fully know and yet fully love. Timothy Keller wrote, "To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us." So, let's talk about loving our spouses. I have 5 things to look at this morning. And first, we can show love to our spouse by practicing committed love. By practicing committed love. There was a small town in Oklahoma in the mid-20th century that year after year produced terrible football teams. Everybody was dispirited by loss after loss. And a very wealthy businessman in the community thought he had the solution, and he asked to speak to the team in the locker room after another disappointing defeat. He gave a great dramatic speech to the players, and being very wealthy, offered a brand new Ford Coupe to everyone on the team if they could beat their rivals in the next game. Well, the team was ecstatic. Full of excitement, they howled and cheered. Their dreams all week long was full of touchdowns and cruising. Finally, the night of the big game arrived. A spirit of victory had overtaken the school. Excitement was at a fever pitch. They ran on to their home field that night with the loudest cheers they've ever heard from the hometown crowd and were demolished 38-0. See, the team's wild dreams did not translate into a single point on the scoreboard. All their excitement couldn't compensate for the players' lack of discipline and conditioning and practice and study and coaching and drills. And see, physical attraction, arousal, crushes, and infatuations come easy. But married, committed love is difficult. Great marriages don't just happen, like you just can't run on the field and win a football game. It takes a lot of effort in a lot of areas. Some have said that it will cost you immensely to have a great marriage, but it is so worth it. Understand that to be in a married relationship, it certainly does take a mutual attraction, shared interest, and even physical chemistry. But commitment is much more critical than compatibility. Marriage is a beautiful, exciting adventure, but it isn't exactly an instinctive relationship. What makes a marriage is a promise, a vow. Marriages begin with a promise. I've heard preachers say that the sexual act is what makes you married in the sight of God. As if in poor judgment you give in to sex, and in the heavenly court you are married to this person. But that's not the case. Though the sexual act creates a bond, it does not create a marriage. What creates a marriage is a vow, a covenant made with God as witness. Malachi 2:14 says, "She is your companion and your wife by covenant." And Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." Cleave meaning to adhere to be joined with, essentially uniquely glued to your spouse. To love your spouse, you must make the daily determination to be committed. Have you ever seen a movie trailer and thought, that movie looks awesome? And then you see the movie and it stunk? I remember in middle school there was this movie, Space Invaders, I was dying to see, about some stupid aliens that invade planet Earth. I remember the previews were hilarious, but the movie was boring. There was even scenes and dialogue in the previews that wasn't in the movie. I was so disappointed. You know, the reason you must practice committed love is because in marriage things will come up that wasn't in the previews. You will see sides of each other you didn't know existed. See, usually in the previews, dating, the best of each other is what we see. And that's the reason cohabitation and the hookup culture of modern dating can be so damaging, is precisely because there is no commitment. If you pour yourself into a person and there's no commitment, it can end just like that, out of the blue. Nowadays, with a phone call or a text message, and it's all over. But commitment keeps you there when the unexpected arrives. But even in marriage, commitment is hard, because in marriage, conflict is a sure thing. Now, there are several reasons why there is conflict in marriage. You have two different people coming together with different life experiences. Nothing happens to us in a vacuum, so our views in marriage and what a relationship would be is shaped by our parents, how we grew up, who our circle of friends were, in 80s movies. And some of it has messed us up. We each come with childhood wounds, adolescent hurts, and adult disappointments. We all bring that in. Another big one is we have certain expectations and preconceived notions of what marriage may be like. And those may be unrealistic. I don't know. Maybe the ladies imagined marriage being every evening your husband running you a hot bubble bath. And as you dined on chilled chocolate-dipped strawberries, he massages your feet, while with great attentiveness listens to everything you have to say. Perhaps us guys, we thought we'd be coming home from work every day, and our wives would be in the kitchen cooking dinner, wearing lingerie and high heels. The point is, we have expectations, and when reality doesn't fit them, conflict can arise. Another source of conflict comes from fear, insecurities, afraid that if they truly knew me, they wouldn't love me. Most fears, however, are based on feelings and not facts, so try to look beyond your fears. It's hard to practice committed love when your emotions rule. So your emotions must be put under reason and the will. Always attack problems, not each other. As partners, there is no winner or loser. You win together or you lose together. 1 Corinthians 13:7 from the New Life Bible says, "Love takes everything that comes without giving up." You know, also often what draws a man and woman together is seeing traits in them we would like to see in ourselves. That's often why opposites attract. He is everything she wishes to be, and she is just what he would secretly like to be like. One of you is timid while the other is outgoing. One of you is a perfectionist while the other just goes with the flow. One of you procrastinates while the other gets things done. Eventually, those traits you fell in love with will annoy you at some point. But it is practicing committed love that will see you through. I'd like to read 1 Corinthians 13:4-7, and I'm reading this through the Common English Bible. 1 Corinthians 13:4-7, it does say this. It says, "Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but it is happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, and hopes for all things, endures all things." So love like that can only exist when you are all in and practice committed love. Secondly, we can show love to our spouse by showing submissive love. Submission in marriage always begins with our mutual submission to God. But a great deal of damage has been done by those who have taught that biblical submission in marriage means the wife is subservient to the husband. In some circles, it's even taught as far as that a woman must stay in an extremely abusive relationship to be obedient to God. Now, there is a natural and a divine mandate uniquely given to the husband to lead and be accountable for the family, and for the family, including the wife, to follow that leadership. And really, a lot of us men need to step up to that role. But this does not mean we are the boss or that it's our way or the highway. It's not about getting your way. Your wives are daughters of God, and they should never be mistreated or bullied or bossed around. How you treat her is how she views herself. But submission goes both ways. The Bible calls it love and respect. Ephesians 5:33 says, "Each one of you should love his wife as himself, and wives should respect their husbands." Let's look at the entire passage that verse is from in Ephesians chapter 5. and in this one I've reverted back to the King James, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 through 33, which says, "Submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." The enemy of submissiveness is selfishness. And respect for your husband goes like this, I think. He doesn't need a second mother. He needs to know that you see him as a very capable man. Laura Story, in her book, When God Doesn't Fix It, writes about her husband becoming disabled from a brain tumor and the difficulties that they faced. And in the trying times, she writes how she remembers a saying from their premarital counseling days. She said what was said was that the whole world could be against your husband, but as long as you are for him, you give him wings. And if the whole world was for him, but you're against him, it's like pouring concrete in his shoes. So constant criticism causes a man to become defensive, while admiration energizes and motivates him. So you love your husband by being his biggest fan. That's what respecting your husband looks like, I think, and he needs to know you believe in him, even if nobody else does. Now, showing submissive love to your wife looks like this, guys. What may not bother a man can really bother a woman. And her security lies in the knowledge that you're going to take care of the things that are important to her. You know, wives don't need lectures from their husbands. She needs to know that her worries and that her concerns matter. What she thinks is important, you think is important. What concerns her concerns you. 1 Peter 3:7 from the Common English Bible says, "Husbands, likewise, submit by living with your wife in ways that honor her, knowing that she is the weaker partner. Honor her all the more, as she is also a co-heir of the gracious care of life." The King James says, "unto the weaker vessel." And I think vessel here simply means the body, not the whole person. Generally, the female is physically weaker than the male. But I will tell you, your wife is not weaker in other ways. She is strong intellectually. She is strong mentally. She is strong emotionally and spiritually. In fact, I depend on the strength of my wife in many areas. And husbands are called to be more submissive. Our call as husbands is to love your wife as Christ loved the church, to submit to death on her behalf. It's He who pursued us when we denied Him. He loved us when we were unlovable. He gave His best when we couldn't repay. And He died to His own desires, and preferences. So let her pick the restaurant, if she can ever decide. When she wants something done in the house, get it done, not 6 months later. As Jesus washed his disciples' feet, get some good lotion and massage her feet. But show submissive love. Thirdly, we can show love to our spouse by pursuing romantic love. Husbands must pursue his wife's heart continually, always seeking ways to sweep her off her feet. You should know that you'll destroy her if you only love her when loneliness creeps up on you, because she seeks your love in all moments, at all time, not just when your own fears and insecurities strike, not just when you need it. Elaine Yusoff wrote that if you show her the moon, she'll show you the entire galaxy. And if you take her to a well, she'll introduce you to the ocean. So learn to write love letters. Song of Songs is one big love letter, or Song of Solomon. It's actually considered a play, a conversation between two lovers. And in Song of Songs, chapter 4:2, I'll give you an example. It says, this is the man writing to the woman. Thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn. See, it means she's got good teeth. But tell her how pretty she is just because you want her to know. Learn to be a good conversationalist, to talk with her. Grunts and one-word answers won't do. Now, typically, men do not have as deep of a reservoir of words as women. We run out of them. So save your best ones for her. And if you do run out of words, have a listening ear. Ask her on a date, one that she can spend an hour primping up for and be excited about. Give her tender touches and gentle words. Give her gifts, the kind that is sentimental, not practical. She doesn't need a griddle, but something special from the heart. And learn to enjoy each other's presence. Try to do so sometimes without the TV or the computer or the phone. Because though technology is a great servant, it's a terrible master. You study your wife and learn what her romantic needs are, and always pursue romantic love with your wife. Understand, romance is all about affection, and it is what she needs. In marriage, sex is an event, and I'll call it the marriage act through the rest of the message. The marriage act is an event, but affection is the environment. Are you providing her an environment of affection? Now, men like a little romance too. You can whisper sweet nothings in our ears, steal kisses, flash some skin. Flirt with your husband. You know what? Men like adventure. Men like to do things, and I really think he wants you with him. If he plays golf, you should play golf with him. Or if you like to shoot guns, you should shoot guns with him. Whatever it is, he wants a playmate in you, and I think that's romantic to him. So pursue romantic love. Now, fourthly, we can show love to our spouse by passionately making love. Yes. The sexual relationship between husband and wife is incredibly important. It should not be a source of tension, but one of fun and closeness and openness and even erotic passion. Let's look at Song of Songs again. I don't know what else you would call it but erotic literature. It's holy dirty talk. I don't even feel comfortable reading some of the verses from this book in front of you, but I would encourage you to read it. It contains some of my favorite verses in the Bible. But why is a book like this in our Bible? It's because as husband and wife, we are not just lifelong companions, but lovers. Song of Songs 6:3 says, I belong to my lover, and my lover belongs to me. The unfortunate thing is the world is full of sexual brokenness, and our marriages are not immune to its effects. It can take some time to become completely sexually open with each other or used to each other, compatible with each other. Because typically men have a quick start and women have to be primed. But you should make it a priority. It deserves more than the scraps of our time and attention. Look with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 2 through 4. 1 Corinthians 7, verses 2 through 4 says, the wife doesn't have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband doesn't have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Don't refuse to meet each other's needs unless you both agree for a short period of time to devote yourselves to prayer. I read an extra verse there. But understand something about the Marriage Act in marriage. You should never use it as a weapon, ever. You don't withhold it as punishment or offer as a reward. It's something you owe to each other. We should always seek to satisfy our spouse's sexual needs, and we must communicate with our spouse what those are. When you do so, you protect each other from sexual sin. But not only that, it is the marital glue that makes your relationship unique among all others. The Marriage Act is unique in that it is the one experience from which the rest of the world is excluded. You know, if your wife is a good cook, others will enjoy her talent of cooking. Or if your husband's a great storyteller, others will enjoy hearing him tell stories. And other qualities and talents and skills will be enjoyed by others. But vitally, the Marriage Act should be an experience experienced exclusively together alone. So, guys, understand women respond to tender affection and kind words. Be sensitive to what they might be going through. Though we could be bleeding from our head and still want it, you should have some self-control if it's just not in the cards. Also, if you want her to open up to you, you don't kiss and tell. What happens between you stays between you. Remember those things. Now, there was a study done at the University of Munster in Germany, and this is what they concluded in this study. It says that our data suggest that sexual activity can lead to partial or complete relief of headaches in some migraine and cluster headache patients. Can't argue with science. But seriously, ladies, seriously, understand that the Marriage Act is a deep emotional need for your husband, not just a physical one. It's God-given, and the number one way men show love to their wives is through the Marriage Act. That's the way God made it. And it is the number one way that your husband feels accepted by you. Rejection can leave a deep emotional scar in his soul if it's a bad, regular thing. No loving husband will force himself on his wife. But it's the wife's role to respond to her husband's initiation, not begrudgingly or out of a sense of duty, but out of a shared desire with active participation. With communication, work, and laughs, it will be a great source of joy in marriage. And I do want to say one more thing. In the chaos and busyness and tragedy of life, sometimes the important things fall by the wayside. And sometimes when all of those things pull at you in a marriage, sometimes the marriage act can bring you together. Now, I just want to share that we all know how the relationship with David and Bathsheba began, that it resulted in a child, and that child did die. Bathsheba had lost her son. The 2 Samuel 12:24 says this. It says, "Then David comforted his wife with Bathsheba and went into her and lay with her." That's just something to think about. But lastly, we can show love to our spouse by always falling in love. Likely you fell in love having fun. People are at their best when they're having fun. And that's how you fall in love, and that's how you stay in love. Do whatever it takes to make your marriage fun. Howard Markman, co-director of the university's Center for Marital and Family Studies, commented, "The more you invest in fun and friendship and being there for your partner, the happier the relationship will get over time." The correlation between fun and marital happiness is high and significant. So have fun. Do you know what else helps you fall in love? Is a song. Does anybody here have a love song that you call your song? Anybody? No one? Well, that's good. I'm sure you do. You might not want to share it when you listen to it. I don't know. A video of a song is going to play, and on the screen with the words. And while that's playing, why don't you take your spouse's hand? And as you sing along, if you want, remember how you fell in love. The fun that you've had. The vows you made at your wedding. The memories of being newlyweds and the challenging times you have seen each other through. You can make a little music video in your mind and fall in love all over again.